Hey, what's going on everybody? Mala here. Happy 2018. I wanted this to be the last video of 2017, but I couldn't get it in the studio in time, so let's just make it the first video of 2018, shall we? This is iPhone 10. Alright, well, before we begin, this part is being recorded with the iPhone 10, including the audio, just like we did with the Galaxy S8. And first impressions of the iPhone 10 are actually really impressive because, well, the iPhone 10 is the actually new iPhone, the first one that we've had for the past 4 years, give or take. Everything about it screams new. It breathes new life into what was otherwise kind of stale in regards to design when talking about iPhones, and actually iOS on part of it. So in regards to the design, since that's the first thing you're going to be taking a look at, the iPhone 10 is actually really beautiful. As soon as you lay your eyes on it, it's all screen. And they do a pretty insistent job in saying all screen when you enter the Apple website, but there's the notch, and we're gonna get to that a little bit later. Well, these are the first iPhones, the 10, the 8, and the 8 Plus. They are the first iPhones to have glass backs since the iPhone 4. This time is not only due to design aspects, but they are also, wireless charging enabled. So if you kind of need glass to do that. But this also means that they are shiny, they're fingerprinty, and if you get the lighter version like I did, the white one, it's gonna do a little bit of a better job, not showing the smudges. And the sides, the actual metal ring around the glass sandwich, it's actually made from a stainless steel type of material, and it's really shiny, and it's probably gonna show scratches more easily than the iPhone 8 and the 8 Plus because it's shiny and not, glossy, not a matte finish. And with all that, take away this. It looks really premium, feels really solid in the hand, and as soon as you drop it, it's gonna break. Apple says that this has the strongest glass to have ever been used on smartphones, the iPhone 10 specifically. But just remember what Zach says. Glass is glass, and glass breaks. It doesn't matter if it's super hard glass, drop it onto concrete and say goodbye to your glass back or front of the iPhone. And actually replacing the glasses on the iPhone 10 is really expensive. Like really. Put a case on it, because if that thing breaks, you're not gonna be happy even if you have Apple Care. Now, all that design is complemented by everything that it presents as features, like the dual speakers, one on the earpiece and other down below. A missing feature is the headphone jack because someone forgot to put it in the blueprint before they, actually made the device. But they do get you an adapter for a little dongle for a lightning to 3.5mm jack in the box in case you have, actual headphones that are not earpods, lightning ones, and you want to use those instead of a Bluetooth setup or the dual speakers and stuff like that. The screen is absolutely gorgeous. Best screen on any iPhone ever. It's the first OLED one, and the panel itself is made by Samsung. They basically make the best OLED panels on the planet right now, so you kind of have to go to them for that. But Apple are the ones that actually tune everything for that color profile and everything that goes through it, and it looks incredible. It's just amazing. The screen on the iPhone 10, 10 out of 10. And storage, you can either get 64 or 256 gigs. If you're the type of person that likes to have everything accessible to you at all times and you don't have massive storage available through either Google Photos or Google Drive or iCloud, well, potentially iCloud first because you're in the Apple ecosystem. If you don't have that and you want to have everything on your phone, go for the 256 gig option because you don't have expendable storage with the iPhone 10. What you do get with this package is IP67 water and dust resistant. So yes, just like the previous two iPhones, this is also water resistant up to 1.5 meters for like 30 minutes or something. Just keep in mind that no phone is waterproof. It's just water resistant. So don't stretch your luck too much, or you may end up with a phone that's got a lot of water inside of it. Okay, so we talked about the dongles that come in the box, But what else comes in there is a pair of lightning earpods, there's a power cord, and the power brick, a regular one. And the iPhone 10 actually has fast charging enabled. But if you want to take advantage out of that, you need to purchase that brick separate from Apple. Just bear in mind that this is a smartphone that's sold for $1,000, and it doesn't come with the fast charger out of the box, which is something that you already know is going to come in the box of every single flagship Android phone released on the past several years. Even the OnePlus 5T, which is half the price of the iPhone 10, comes with the dash charger in the box. But Apple decided to go the cheap route, and if you want it, you're gonna have to pay extra. One thing that I kind of find nice that Apple did was that when they decided to finally implement wireless charging on their phones, they decided to use the Qi standard, which is basically the most widespread standard on the planet, which is good because this is one area where they apparently decided they didn't want to piss off their partners that much, but we end up gaining from it, so thumbs up. Now, also regarding the battery life of the iPhone 10 is better than the 8, not as good as the 8 Plus. And comparing to most, big $1,000 flagships on the Android side, or even, lower than $1,000, you're probably gonna get less battery life out of the iPhone 10 than the Androids during the day of normal usage, consuming content and all that stuff. But there's one area where you just gotta praise Apple because they really do the best job out of everyone producing smartphones right now. The standby time on the iPhone 10 and the 8 Plus and the 8 for that matter is ridiculously better than everything on the Android side, unless you get any Android phone and strip away every single feature it has, just turn everything off and leave it, sitting down the side. It's probably still gonna actually use more power than the iPhone 10 uses to keep itself on standby. In case you guys didn't notice, I didn't go through a detailed spec sheet of everything that's inside of the iPhone 10 because I don't think that's necessary, and because you can kind of gain benchmarks anyway. So suffice it to say that this is the best and the most powerful iPhone ever made by Apple, obviously, and it runs super smooth. The experience of actually using the iPhone 10 is top notch. But that's one side. The other side is that experience of using it is actually using iOS, which is now 11 dot something or 24, I don't know. It's the latest iteration of iOS. And it's the same piece of software that you have on the 8 and 8 Plus, but on the 10, you get a bunch of stuff stripped away because you don't have a physical button anymore, and instead of that, you get a bunch of gestures. And even if you decide that you're not gonna read any manuals, you're just gonna pick up and start using your phone, you are gonna kind of instinctively know what to do to get certain stuff done, like going home from an app. But I kind of already knew how stuff worked before I started testing it, so I asked my wife to give me her opinion and fiddle with the phone around a little bit, and I kind of saw the same pattern and same types of behavior. It was kind of instinctive, like to reach down and just swipe up to get back to where you were before you opened the app. But since it was just a test and not that much of an usage, she was always going back to try and pressing where the home button was supposed to be, previously, or other buttons and gestures on the screen itself. But if you actually get this phone and start using it, those memories, those instincts you have from using previous versions of iPhones are probably going to be replaced by the new ones, and you're not even going to think about them in not too long a time. But that said, I still think some implementations of a couple of gestures could have been a little bit better thought out, maybe. For example, if you want to close off an application like forever, you previously would go into multitasking and then just flick the application up and it was gone. Poof. Now you need to go into multitasking, but instead of flicking stuff, because if you do that, you go back to the home, because swiping up goes back to the home. You need to go into multitasking, then holding the screen on top of whatever app you want. Then a couple of buttons will pop up on the top left so that you can click it and then it would close, or from there, flick it up. If you still have the ability to flick it up just after you press it for a couple of seconds, why not leave something that was instinctive to everybody and exclusive to the multitasking window to flick up from an app itself and get that thing to just close off? leave the flick open to go back home if you swipe from the bottom instead of from the middle of the screen, for example. And one other thing that kind of bugs me is that everything that's displayed by the sides of the notches, like information on time, battery, LTE, signal, Wi-Fi, and stuff like that, there's not enough space to display everything that's probably going to be needed to be displayed for you. So you're going to be needing to constantly drop that menu down to actually see your percentage of the battery life, for example, or if your do not disturb settings are turned on or off, and I really can't see that being useful at all. It's just an annoyance. Quite frankly, the design language in iOS right now is pretty disjointed. There are some places where you have a panel that, covers everything. In other spaces you have translucent panels, and then you have stuff that only covers a part of the screen, and it just doesn't feel like there was as much thought into every detail of that aspect as you can get from the design of the physical body of the phone. And it doesn't matter that iOS is not only used on the iPhone 10, but in previous versions. If you get an iPhone 10, everything about it, especially the experience of actually using it, needs to feel as premium as the price tag on the phone itself. You're not just paying for the hardware, you're paying for how you use that hardware. If the software was absolutely horrible, nobody would buy the hardware despite it being pretty. But in a brighter note, you have the cameras, which are all of them exceptional. It's the best photo camera on an iPhone ever. It's still the best video camera on any smartphone, my personal opinion. Yours may differ. And the front-facing camera, the selfie shooter, is actually pretty good. And all of them do a pretty good job with low light situations and good lighting situations and all that stuff. Portrait mode, which when it was released was crap, and now it's less crap. It's not as good as the Pixels, for example, and it tends to over blur the edges of what it thinks are the edge of the subject you're taking a picture of. And it tends to have a really hard time with hairlines and with ears and beards and stuff like that. So it could be great, but it's not as good. I generally don't use it because the normal pictures look amazing enough. And finally, all those pictures and videos that you're going to be taking is going to be consumed on that screen. Yes, the screen is amazing, but together with the screen comes the notch. Since you don't have a fingerprint sensor anymore, so no Touch ID either on the front or the back, the notch came to give us Face ID. And Face ID is a pretty neat security feature. It works in the dark. It's not flawless. It works like 95% of the time for me. And I find it weird that it doesn't work if the phone is sideways. Maybe it even works, but for me it didn't. So I don't know. Face ID is interesting and it's a pretty neat feature, but I don't think it's that much of a finished product to actually replace completely Touch ID. I miss having a fingerprint sensor somewhere. Oh, and one more thing about Face ID. When you're trying to unlock your phone, you tap on it or you click the side button and it will wake up. And then you swipe up and it will try to read your face and unlock the phone, and voila. But if it doesn't read your face, it's gonna try to, and you're gonna stay there staring at your phone until it realizes it can't read your face, and then a keypad's gonna, pop up so you can punch in your PIN or passcode. But overall, I kind of do like Face ID. And all that takes place in the notch, which is not that much of a nuisance. It's as soon as you get it, you're gonna look at the notch and say, interesting. And then you're gonna start using the phone, and 5 minutes later, the notch disappeared. The only time where it actually kind of bothered me is when I'm consuming content with it sideways, like specifically video. And it's something that happened with the S8 and S8 Plus when they were released, because the curved edges meant that if you punched in to, take advantage of all the length of the screen, you would lose a little bit of what was being displayed to the height. You would cut out a little bit on the top and on the bottom. And the iPhone 10 has the exact same situation, but you also lose a little bit because of the notch on one of the sides. But quite frankly, that really isn't that much of an issue. It doesn't detract much from the experience of using iPhone 10 at all. Well, maybe a little bit, depending on how OCD'd are you. And I guess that's the perfect way to end this video, because the iPhone 10 is great enough on everything it tries to do, including iOS with all its flaws and all the stuff that I kind of ranted on about. So if you have the budget for it and you're thinking about the iPhone 10 or the 8 Plus, unless you really need the bigger battery, the iPhone 10 is the best iPhone you can get right now. And taking that into consideration, I would still actually recommend that above the iPhone 8 Plus, because this is the direction that Apple is probably gonna go from here into the future. So it kind of does make sense to just jump in the boat and go along for the ride. But that's about it for our first video of 2018. Hope you guys enjoyed it, so like and subscribe if you did. Leave any comments or suggestions down below as usual if you feel like it. I'm probably, well, definitely gonna read all of them and respond to all of them as well. And I really do appreciate all the feedback. Hope you guys have a great start of the year, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.